The Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. In June of 2015, Jeff and I were in London, and we happened upon Queen Elizabeth's birthday parade, known as the Trooping of the Colour. Has anyone ever been witness to the Trooping of the Colour? Wow, that was spectacular. 1,400 soldiers, 200 horses, and 400 musicians. And this is something we stumbled upon. We found out about this special event the day before when we were taking one of those tours on those double-decker buses, and our tour guide announced it. So we made sure that we were there good and early the next morning. I think we treated it like Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. We were 2 hours early, and trust me, we were the only ones on the streets at that time. We were so early that there was a Bobby standing on the street corner, and he was gracious enough to offer a good place for us to view the troops as they rounded the bend in the street. Our long wait paid off, and we saw the parade of all parades as it wound its way to and from Buckingham Palace and the Royal Parade grounds. Excitement was in the air. The Queen, the whole royal family, the hundreds of troops and their well-groomed horses and carriages, the bands in perfect step and pitch. And by the way, for better bones and better balance class, I know that Dr. Kaufman plays that tune from that parade, actually. I noticed that the other day. And he has the video of the parade. We aren't exactly royal family fanatics, but I think we did a pretty good job identifying those celebrity members of the monarchy as they passed by. Now, the hard ones to pick out are those horse riders, because they have that same headgear on that the soldiers around them have, and they blend in. But the Queen was unmistakably in one of those carriages, one of those open carriages. There she was in all of her splendor. And it seemed like a dream that she was so close. She was going by us so closely. Now, as Queen Elizabeth's carriage approached, you could see her suddenly motion with her arms for the driver to stop, and the carriage came to a screeching halt. The Queen pointed over to the area where Jeff and I were standing in the clump of trees. I looked behind us because I thought, what in the world has happened that she's pointing over here in our direction? And just as plain as day, I could hear her shout out into the street, "Why, Philip, there are our friends from Pennsylvania, Jeffrey and Robin." She was talking about us. She recognized us. Then, of course, I did realize that it was a dream. And I snapped out of it and continued to watch this procession in progress. Today is Christ the King Day. We've reached the end of our Pentecost season, and we're making our way into the season of Advent, and it's a time of great anticipation. We've witnessed God's faithfulness to us throughout all of Pentecost. We've celebrated the harvest of God's love as the seed was sown, was nurtured, and was harvested with our own hands. And now we ask of God, what next? And God promises to work in ways we've never seen God work before. The excitement is building. We anticipate the King of Kings entering this world. This is a royal birth like no other this world has experienced. We look for the lights up in the palace windows in the wee morning hours. We eagerly await the official word that he will be born. But as you well know, our royal baby comes into the world and sets up his kingdom in a way we could never imagine. He comes to surprise us around every bend. And yes, along the way, he does point us out in the crowd. He recognizes us. He knows our every need. He knows us by name. He knows the road that we took to get to that vantage spot that morning. He knows our pain. He steps down off his throne, and in the greatest humility, he offers his life for us. That's who we await this day, Jesus Christ our Lord, the King of Kings. Jesus left his palace to dwell among us. His creation, the foxes, he tells in the Gospel of Matthew, had holes, and the birds had nests, but Jesus had nowhere to lay his head. And Jesus would seek out those who had nowhere to lay their head as well. And he would connect with them. He would dwell with them and bring healing change to their lives. And all along this healing process, Jesus would invite others into that relationship of inter and inner dwelling. King Jesus ventured off the royal highway, and he found the least, the lost, and the lonely in this world. Remember Zacchaeus up there in that tree? He found Zacchaeus. He found the woman at the well during the heat of the day. He found the distraught, heartbroken disciples along the beach after his death and his resurrection. And he cooked breakfast for them. He cooked fish, something that they had fished for all night long and didn't have any fish. He already had their need taken care of on the beach. And he sought out Peter that night, and he embraced him with loving arms. Jesus came to us to live with us. Jesus walks the pathway to the cross with us. Christ comes and walks with us in each and every trial along the way. And when we give of ourselves, when we empty ourselves, Christ completes us, gives us the strength to continue, and leads us in the way. We certainly don't have a passive-aggressive Jesus. Jesus has come to dwell among us for a reason. The coming of Christ is about more than a cute little baby in a manger story. That little baby surrounded by loving parents and blessed, lovely, lowly shepherds from the plains. Jesus is not just here on a fact-finding mission. Jesus is here to make a difference in this world. And when Christ entered this world and enters this world, there is a mighty difference. Salvation comes to all people. The lopsided scales of justice are recalibrated. The first are last, and the last are first. Tables are turned. When Jesus enters into our world, he certainly comes to us to free us from the shackles of injustice. He certainly comes to bring us comfort in our sorrows. He certainly comes to walk the lonely road with us. He certainly comes to stand up against evil that surrounds us. But when Jesus enters into our world, something we don't always like to think about, Jesus comes to make a difference in our lives. He comes to challenge our complacency and our mediocrity. King Jesus may step off his throne to find us in the masses of people gathered, to throw a loving arm around us and to dine with us. But the King also asks us the tough questions surrounding our love and care for the least, the lost, and the lonely. If you really love me, you'll feed my sheep, he told Peter. If you really love me, you will give of the best, you will give of the best, the first fruits of your labor, for the poor, not the leftovers, the surplus that won't cause you any economic hardship. He asks us to give of our first fruits. Last week at the annual meeting, as we were reviewing the 2018 financial situation and introducing the 2019 budget, there was a big part of me that was relieved, like we did it. We'll finish the year looking good, in better shape than we had budgeted last year. But then there's another part of me that's feeling convicted. Convicted of operating out of a low-risk maintenance mode of ministry. Budgeting in areas that are safe so that we can celebrate another good year next year. Another, we made it, we survived. Listen to the word. We survived another year. As was noted in the meeting, most of our budget is in that safe range. I wonder what ministry at St. Matthew would look like if we took a faith step out of that safe maintenance mode range, trusted Jesus, the one who fed 5,000 people with a couple of fish and loaves of bread, and moved into a missional mode here at St. Matthew. What would it be like if we paid God up front? Those increases that we would like to give towards future ministry in 2019, instead of waiting to see how much we have left over to give. What would it be like if we trusted that God would bring more people into our family this year, making room for them ahead of time, praying for them, handing them bulletins and newsletters, putting more chairs out and more tables out in fellowship hall in anticipation of the new people, planning for additional room for those who are not yet here. What would it be like if we listened to that rabbi along the shores of Galilee, calling us to follow him in holy risk-taking, calling us to live calling us to a life of thriving instead of just surviving. The King is coming, and nothing will be the same again. That's the way it is with God. He renews us each and every day. He calls us into a life of serving him through serving others. The King is coming to establish his kingdom. My friends, what is right will be right. And what is truth, we will finally find out is truth. We will know the truth. He is the Alpha and Omega, who is and was and is to come. He draws us to himself. And when he draws us to himself, he doesn't exploit us. He seeks the best for us and for all of creation. Whatever it is that God calls us to do, God will be faithful to us. And God will make the impossible possible. This is only the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, God's Son.